Good evening. My name is Melvin Adams. I'm president of Noah Webster Educational Foundation, and it's a delight to have you joining us tonight, those of you here in the audience and those of you who are joining us, with us online tonight. We are very excited about the panel that we are going to have tonight. Our focus is going to be on instruction. With all the crazy going on in our world today in the space of education, a lot of parents are concerned. What are our kids being taught? What should they be taught? And so tonight we're joined by three great panelists, and I want to introduce those at this time. First to my right is Brandy Cornell. Brandy is representing the homeschool community in our discussion tonight. Let me just add, all of the folk here have actually experienced multiple areas of education, not just the area they represent, because professionals can work in all those areas. But Brandy represents the homeschool space. She is a fully certified teacher. David Duncan represents the homeschool, not the homeschool, I'm sorry. David Duncan represents the private school community, and I have known David for a while because actually our two youngest sons studied under him, and he was one of their favorite teachers. So I thought, I got to get David on this panel. And then we have Rochelle Carlson. Rochelle is a public school teacher, has taught public school for many years and will be representing that space. She was an AP teacher, AP Math, is that correct?
Computer science.
Computer science.
But I also taught math.
Okay, very good. So you're going to hear from them a bit more in just a few minutes. First, though, I would invite all of you to please mute or silence your phones so that we don't have interruptions on that. And then for those of you, whether you're here in the audience or whether you are online, you may have questions that you'd like to submit to this panel. And if you do, you can text those to 877-322-NWEF, which is, that's 877-322-6933. One more time, 877-322-6933. And we'll do our best to ask the questions tonight if they're appropriate questions. If we can't get to them, we will respond to you with answers. So thank you for taking time to submit your questions. Now, Noah Webster Educational Foundation is focused on core principles and best practices in education. We really focus on 5 key areas. There's the role of instruction in education. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. There's the role of parents. There's the role of government, there's the role of faith and morality, and there's the role of facilities. And we will be addressing all of those in time. We have a lot of information on that on our website. Our website is nwef.org, nwef.org. But as we begin our session tonight, why don't we start by just rolling a short video that'll help us all kind of come together on the same page.
When it comes to the education of a child, there is one word that captures the process. That word is instruction. But instruction itself involves a wide scope of influences, all of which have a lasting impact on your child. These influences include parents, family, teachers, coaches, mentors, language, curriculum, career guidance, technology, resources, environment, opportunity, and attitude. At Noah Webster Educational Foundation, we want every child to get the very best instruction possible. You do too. That's why we want to partner with you to help lead a national conversation to bring improvements in the instruction offered to our children. To learn more, visit nwef.org.
Right, so let's get started on this panel. So the first question is really an easy one. So tell us a little bit more about how you got into education as a teacher and why you're still there. And if you want to throw in any other quick bits about yourself, feel free to do that. Why don't we start with you, Brandy, and then we'll go down the row.
Okay. I really got into education because I just love the art of teaching, and mostly because I love children. But the main reason I stay is because I felt a calling on my life from the Lord, and so I teach kindergarten at SMLCA now. I homeschooled our daughter for 4 years, and I taught in public school for 6. And I really want to just shape our future with sharing the gospel of Jesus and teaching them to their best of their ability to help them on the next step in their journey.
And my name is David Duncan. I've been a private school teacher for 18 years now. It's gone very quickly. When I first became a teacher, I was actually on a school board establishing a private school, and they asked me to start teaching the Bible classes for the school, which I was happy to do. And as I taught more and more, I realized that my lifelong learner skills, my skills at dealing with teenagers really fit me very, very well in the classroom. And I continue to teach today because I love my students and I love the subject matter. It's fun to stand in front of a bunch of teens and spark their imagination and fill their minds with facts and fill their hearts with values. It's a blast.
I'm Rochelle Carlson, and I taught for 18 years in the public schools in Prince William County and loved every minute of it. I taught computer science and I taught math, and had some kids do some incredible things over the years. And when I first started, though, I was working in the IT industry, and my company I was working for was kind of going out of business, and I thought I wanted to do something to make a difference. And I believe when you work with kids, there's just something awesome about seeing them learn and grow and get the concepts and discuss things in class. I've always loved that and still do. I am retired now. I just retired this past year.
Very good. Thank you for sharing those things. So, second question is this. As we think about education and instruction particularly, there are educational basics. There are the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's what all of us used to think about when we thought about school. There are other things like history, philosophy, literature, the arts and sciences. Do you agree that those are kind of the core concepts and core foundational courses in education?
It's such a great question. I was giving that some thought, as we were preparing for this panel. I think that the list is incomplete without the inclusion of morals or ethics or values. That is absolutely imperative that is being taught in the schools, whether it's homeschooling, private schooling, or public school. Martin Luther King Jr. said that education without values is like a ship without a compass. It has no direction. C.S. Lewis was a little nastier. He said that education without morality produces clever devils. And so, I think that I would bet that every competent teacher goes into the classroom eager to share the important values of life, along with whether it's science or art or math or social studies.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. But let me ask a follow-up question, because then that kind of leads to the question, does that mean that all schools, because you teach in a Christian school, you teach philosophy, you teach religion, comparative religions, and so forth. Are you saying that that's what needs to be taught in all schools, including public schools, or can we distinguish between teaching religion? Because I think there's a whole lot of folk out there that don't want somebody teaching their kid religion unless they specifically choose to put their child in a school that they know is going to teach a faith-based curriculum that they know about and agree with. So there's a difference maybe between character education and faith-based curriculum. I know that they're all based on philosophy and religion, morals and character and all of that. And that's a critical, central part of our society. It's a whole nother topic, and we do cover that in our, But for those listening tonight, anybody want to speak to that just very briefly?
Well, first of all, I can tell you, I don't teach social studies, but I do know social studies teachers, and I know that when they teach world history, they do teach about world religions, and that's just part of the history of the world. Yeah. Of course, they teach it from a secular perspective. They try to teach, I believe, what each religion believes. It might not be accurate totally, but I think they try their best to do that. Do I think it's important to teach that? Yes, I think it should be taught in the public schools, but I guess I have a Christian background, and I prefer that my kids, I would had liked them going through private school. I just couldn't afford it. And I do think there are things that are an asset in private schools if you're going to send your kids to a private school based on the religion that you believe in. But if you're also have your kids in a public school, I can tell you there's a lot of Christians in public schools.
Yes.
And there's a lot of Christian teachers in public schools too. I know that that's a myth, and people don't know about it, or they don't think about it, but it is true. And I think that there is a lot of discussion. I even have a computer science and math class. You hear a lot of discussion amongst the kids, even about things like religion and beliefs and politics, and I think that's something to encourage in the public school as well as in the private school or homeschool.
Yeah, I would agree completely with that. It's the parents. I don't want to go too far into the philosophy of education, but it's the parents that are expecting and have the right to expect that their students are receiving the kind of education that they want them to have. Mm-hmm. And so a community that is going to educate their children needs to come together and figure out what the standards of that community are going to be and what they're going to teach their kids. And I totally agree. That needs to happen in the public school as well as the private school. It doesn't need to be indoctrination, right, but it needs to be in culturalization. They need to learn what it means to be an American citizen and to treat others as they want to be treated.
Mm-hmm. Very good. All right, so there is curriculum, and then there is instruction. So could somebody talk to us about the difference, because we hear those terms a lot for people that are they're not educators. What's the difference between curriculum and instruction?
Well, I would say that the definition of curriculum is the course of study or the program of study, and then the instruction part of it is the art of teaching or putting it into practice.
Okay. We agreement there? Okay, very good. All right. So now we're going to, another question here. As educators, what do you think the top 3 most critical components of instruction are, and why? A couple minutes each. Why don't we start on that end this time?
Well, first of all, I think you need to identify the objectives, what it is you're going to teach. I always have my objectives written on the board every single day, and then there's also a piece where you have to explain what it is, what the objectives are in terms that kids can understand, connect with them. And then I also think there's a little bit more to it than that. You got to get the kids involved, and like an active learning environment where they're learning from each other, from the teacher, that everybody's views are important, even if they're not your views in the classroom. And when you got an environment in a classroom where the kids are drawing off each other and drawing off the teacher, it's energizing, I guess is the word I'm looking for. I think those are the three keys for me. I'm sure there's more that somebody else might bring up that is like, oh, I didn't think of that, but yeah.
David?
I agree with all of that. That's incredibly important. I think another key component of education is parental involvement. I know for my children who attend a private school, when I am on top of what they're learning and making sure that their homework is getting done, then they tend to have a lot more success in the classroom than if I turn my attention somewhere else and let them work through it on their own. As a teacher, I always look forward to parents bringing questions, concerns, encouragement, criticism, whatever it is, because we are, as educators, we're servants of the parents. And so I think that parent involvement is incredibly important. Good curriculum is important. Energized teachers are important. I think that that balance between curriculum and instruction, finding the right balance where the curriculum is being followed, but the teacher has the freedom to teach. They're not just running them. They're not just a facilitator running them through a program. I think that's incredibly important.
Okay.
I would have to agree with both of you. The only thing I would add is probably maybe an assessment that would allow your child to facilitate what they've learned, maybe to you as the parent, and that involves, being a parent engagement. Not just, what'd you learn today? And most of them say, nothing. Yeah. But actually engaging with them and asking them, tell me something you learned today. And, just not just memorization of something, maybe critically thinking about what they learned today.
Yeah. Thank you. That's great input. And, Dave, you specifically mentioned the role of parents. That is such a huge area, and I don't want to go down that area too deeply. But one thing I will say as a teacher myself, and after having talked to hundreds, even thousands of teachers in all kinds of places, I don't know of any serious teacher that does not want the parents engaged, because engaged parents make better students. It makes the job of the teacher easier, and then how to work with that student, because the engagement from the parent just helps education happen. So thank you for those remarks from each of you. So we hear this a lot. People say, look, we don't want our kids indoctrinated. We want them to be taught how to think and not just what to think. So are critical changes needed in the instruction that many students receive today?
Yes, I feel they do. I feel that the engagement of parental involvement is important, but also leading by example as parents at home, engaging them in conversations, around the dinner table. Those are super important for sharing your morals and values, and so that they can build on that. And is also the exposure that they get to other views and beliefs. I think that's very important, because then that gets them critically thinking about, not just my little world that I live in, but other people's worlds.
Mm-hmm. Would you not also say that you can teach a kid what to think, but if you do that, they're just memorizing things and they never really learn how to think, and therefore they're never going to be successful in life. They're just going to go around like a robot, and unfortunately, we got way too much of that going on. That's what turns into indoctrination, arguably. Any further thoughts on that?
Sure. I think it's one of my passions is to help my students learn how to think. I think that, again, going back to curriculum versus instruction, curriculum is good for teaching children what to think. That is the source of facts and information that they're going to need to be successful in school and then later on in life. But teaching children how to think, teachers do that. Curriculum does not do that well.
Yeah.
Interaction with each other as student peers, interaction with their teacher, talking to their parents over the dinner table. That's where we learn how to think, when we are mixing it up with people that are questioning our beliefs or questioning something or bringing another perspective to us. That's how you learn how to think. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you lean too far into the curriculum and you discount the power of the teacher in the classroom, that students will not learn how to think. And I think that is a common problem in our schools. You could, of course, lean the other way also and have social time in class and never cover any of the curriculum, and you come out very good at socializing, but then you don't know any of the facts. You need the raw materials to create knowledge. Right. And so, we need both. I don't want to lean one way or the other too far, but I think our schools tend to lean towards curriculum way too much and away from teacher freedom in the classroom, because I think that's where real education is happening, personally.
Mm-hmm. Anything you want to add?
I was just going to add that I've had this discussion with other teachers. We're going to teach this objective and that objective. I said the one thing that always drove me a little crazy is that they need to be able to differentiate between, like in mathematics, there's solving this type of problem, that type of problem, but you need to be able to put them all together. And they have to differentiate between the 8 different types of problems that they're solving and be able to reason through that process. And that is left out in part of the curriculum. That's on the math side of things, but I'm just saying that I'm sure that fits with some other type of, matter of fact, what should be added to the curriculum is probably things like critical thinking skills, being able to compare and contrast 2 different ideas, come up with, 5 different points for, 5 different points against, why is one better than the other. And that does teach critical thinking skills, but it should be actually part of the curriculum itself. Am I making sense? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the teaching for something like that is much more abstract thought, which is what we want our kids to get to by the time they get to be seniors in high school.
Absolutely. Excellent comments. All right, so what does curiosity and imagination play in instruction? And how have you seen that play out in the education method you are presently representing today?
In homeschool, I think that it allows so in homeschool you can use Legos or dolls, and they can act out, different historical events, which allows them to use their imagination and their curiosity as well. But also, when if you take them on an outdoor field trip or just a nature walk in general, they're getting outdoors. They're actually maybe engaged in something different than what was in the textbook or whatever, and they might be more of an explorer and want to be curious about, I found this flower. Okay, well, let's go study this flower or study the plants or something like that. I think that just teaches them to be innovators and have a voice and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Curiosity, imagination, that's incredibly important in the classroom. I'll tell you what I tell my students. I tell my students that good teachers collect answers, great teachers collect questions. Questioning the world, finding out what the world is about, wondering about things. That is, to me, that is the ingredient that makes education come to life. Mm-hmm. The students have their own questions, and addressing their questions, answering their questions, or helping them to think through their questions and showing them a variety of answers. A class comes alive when you do that, and it is that's the thing that keeps me coming back to the classroom. I have questions.
From my perspective, all these things were good, but I teach computer science. I mean, I love teaching math too, but at the end of the year, I usually have a project, and they can work in groups, and they define the projects. They tell me what they're going to do. They have to write a proposal. They have to tell me what they're going to design or what, a lot of times it's a game, but not always. One kid did a physics engine. Another group did something where they were interacting over a network and doing the risk game. It was very complex. It was something you would see from a college level, but when you give them a project or an open-ended question, an open-ended problem, their imaginations start flying. What can I do? And then you tell them they got to present at their class, of course, then they want to impress everybody else. So it's exciting to see that type of stuff in the classroom, but it's got to be open-ended. It's got to be something that is beyond the box.
Yeah.
It's got to be something that you just don't have the curriculum. It's beyond the curriculum, basically. And matter of fact, most of it is putting the whole curriculum together, because part of their reality was, I said, you have to do this, 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 this. You have to do data structures. You have to do conditionals. You have to do, those type of things in your code, and just use it all.
Mm-hmm.
And then their imaginations go. It's incredible, actually, by the end of the year.
There you go. Great feedback. Thank you. So one of the big reasons for education, of course, is to help our students, our children, grow up, learn enough things that they can actually be successful in life. And while we probably don't hear enough about this, but it's actually helping prepare them for the workforce. When we look at the role of government in education, that's one of their primary interests, is preparing people for the workforce. And so with that in mind, how can schools prepare students with marketable skills and make sure that they're employable by the time they graduate high school? How are we doing this, or how are we doing it at all in this area? What's encouraging? What needs improvement? This is a general question. Any of you can respond. We'll give it a couple minutes.
As a math teacher, I can tell you that I personally, my mother, when she was alive, used to always complain when she'd go to the store and somebody should give just a few cents more, so they would get the even dollar, and they couldn't do it. Yeah. She says, I'm not good at math. She wasn't. She says, but I can do that. And I was taught that, and how many years ago, and I still remember. And I do think as a math teacher, I can tell you I've seen some of the history of some of the crazy things they're going to do, like when they started giving calculators to kindergartners. There's nothing, and then I remember having an argument in a classroom with Virginia Tech graduate students in education. And they were talking about, people shouldn't memorize the multiplication tables. And I'm sitting there as an Algebra 1 teacher saying, they can't follow what you're doing on the board. If they can't, and what is so wrong with being able to memorize the multiplication tables? And I also was the only person in the room that worked in the IT industry. In the IT industry, nobody brings a calculator to a meeting. And you got these engineers flowing out these 10-digit, 6-digit numbers by 6-digit numbers, and they can figure them out in a head because they have a number sense. Mm-hmm. They need a number sense. But there's even more than that. When you're talking about getting a job right out of high school, I've had kids do that. I have kids now that were working for Lockheed Martin their senior year of high school having a computer science degree. Mm-hmm. They do need some technical skills, I think, to work in an office environment nowadays. And it doesn't have to be writing code, but it could be learning Excel, learning Microsoft Word, PowerPoint. And I'm sure most of the kids in our high school actually learned some of those skills. But they do need some basic math skills, too. I think they need more than that. They need the philosophy stuff that you're talking about and be able to reason. And your boss tells you to go do something, that might not make a little sense. Maybe you can reason politely with your boss. They need people skills, too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anybody want to add?
It's a all of the above answer. We need all of those things. From a Christian private school perspective, the Bible says we are to train up our children in the way they should go. When they're old, they will not depart from it. That is not referring specifically to a spiritual life. That's referring to the skills of life. We're told in the book of Proverbs that we should have knowledge and understanding. We need to add to it wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to apply what we know. And so we need our students to come out of high school being able to apply the things they've learned so they can be successful in life. They can be leaders in life. They can pursue their dreams, and they can be part of our society and a benefit to themselves and others, not a drain. And we need all those things. We need arts, we need athletics, we need hands-on training and job skills and how to do your taxes and how to live on a budget. All the basic life skills, all the things that parents teach their kids need to be taught in the school because the parents are outsourcing that education to us. And so we need to treat the children like these are our kids going out into life. We need them to be able to succeed, to step out and be ready to go.
Yep. Want to add anything?
Possibly job interview skills, being able to, ask those questions and, reciprocate with, a good answer. And maybe, like you said, balance a checkbook. Know how to have a budget when you get out on your own. I think that's super important for them to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to say that they do teach personal finance and economics at high school. It is a requirement of the public schools in Virginia to do that. So they do get some personal finance and how to invest money and how to do their banking and how to write taxes and all that kind of stuff. Do they remember it? I don't know.
It depends if they have the calculator or not, right? Right. Okay, that's great. So here's a question. What effect has virtual schooling had on instruction?
I taught virtual from September of last year until the end of actually to the end of the year, and then from the end of February till the end of the school year, I taught both virtual and in the classroom at the same time, because that's the way the public schools are, especially in the big city areas. There are some good things about it, and there are some bad things about it. The good things about it, you've got all the curriculum there online. They can't say they didn't get something. It's there. They have videos. We would provide videos of everything so that if they miss class or something happened, everything's there for them to learn. And the other advantage of it is for those kids that take dual enrollment classes, they have more options out there, and they can take many more different dual enrollment classes than they've ever had the option of before. The disadvantage, and I don't know how you guys would feel about this, but it was really weird to teach in a classroom where you've got 3 to 5 kids, and then most of your kids are sitting in a camera right in front of you. And then the law was that the kids don't have to show themselves, so you have no idea whether they're doing anything or not, or even if they're paying attention, or if they're daydreaming, or they're walking around the room. You don't know what they're doing. And then you can't, when you have conversations about parents that Johnny isn't doing so well, you can't tell the parent exactly what's going on because you don't know. The other thing is, when you are in a classroom, you walk around the room. I can correct, if I'm teaching computer science, I can correct 30 kids' code 3 or 4 times in an hour and a half class. On the line, okay, they're conscious, they don't want other people to see their code, so you put them in a breakout room. Okay, that takes a minute just to get to the breakout room. And then you get another, you're talking, you have an hour and a half class, you've talked to 15 kids at most, and that's like going fast.
Yeah.
And you cannot get to all the kids in a classroom, which is very sad. It leaves behind the kids that aren't self-motivated. It's harder to get them through the class. So those were the disadvantages I saw.
Anything anybody want to add?
Yeah. Yeah, Brand News. I started teaching virtual classes when COVID broke, and completed the 2019-2020 school year completely online with my students for 2 or 3 months, however that, about 3 months. And then this past school year, we were blessed to have in-school instruction, but we also did an online component for those students who did not, their parents did not want them to come to the school. I just think that the students who weren't sitting in the classroom were robbed of their education. The students that I had to leave and instruct completely online during the COVID outbreak. They missed out, and they know it. They know, because I explained to them, this is what we're going to do later this year. We've got these amazing projects, and we're going to have these discussions. We're going to learn about this topic and that topic. And they were so excited. And then February hit, and we all went home, and I put all of it in video online. And then I went back, and I asked all those students after they graduated, how much of that did you get to? How much? And they just said, I was robbed of the last half of my senior year in your class. I missed all of that good stuff that we could have had together. I think that for highly motivated students who are tech savvy and have ambition, that they can do classes completely online and they can be very successful. I've had lots of students do that. My daughter takes dual enrollment classes. She does great. Most of my education has been online, and I did fine. But for most students, it's just robbery. And I feel so bad for them. And I want them to have whatever we can give them. If that's all they can get, I want them to have that. But it does not compare to the classroom. It's all curriculum, no instruction almost.
So let me just throw one thing in here real quick. You're the panel, but I think one of the big factors of in-person instruction is really this is an old-fashioned word, but it's the mentoring. It is the personal time investing in that individual, hearing them, caring for them, nurturing them, letting them feel the connectedness. And it's very difficult to do that online. And many students desperately need that in their lives.
Yeah, and if you ask teachers, why did you become a teacher? Oh, so many of them are going to say, so that I could impact that one student. I could change that one life, and that doesn't happen on a screen. Yeah. That happens face to face.
Yeah. All right, here's a 3-part question. This is like school, okay? And I'm not wearing my glasses. So how has education changed in the past 5 years? What do you predict will happen in the next 5 to 10 years? And what are the most critical changes that we must make to face the future effectively? General question.
Do we answer one at a time?
You don't have to, but it's
First question, or?
Good to speak, well, just whatever.
What's happened in the last 5 years? One year I sat on the board to decide what went on for the state, what goes on the Algebra 1 SOL, and they were, this is probably 7 years ago, and what they were doing is they were drastically increasing the rigor of the test and taking out multiple choice questions, putting in fill in the blank questions, making it harder and more thought-provoking. And now, of course, what's happening is they're taking away tests, state exams. I understand last year because of COVID, they were the whole state didn't have to take any of them. But it's been more of a swing towards learning about other topics besides what's in the curriculum. Like I went through, in the last 5 years, this past year, I went through critical race theory training and LGBTQ training as a teacher with the thought that we're going to pass this on to our students. That's what's happening in the public schools. And so that's the direction I think it's going to get worse. As a matter of fact, that's why I resigned. I said, I can't teach this because there are some truths in like critical race theory. I do believe racism is a problem. But I don't think all white people are racist. This is what I was told in the critical race theory. All white people are racists, and African Americans or blacks, however they want to be distinguished, are not racist and cannot be racist. And as a Christian, you know that all people sin. We're all fallen, and it doesn't make any difference what race you are from. And that particular sin could be across the board. It's not just in one boot camp. But it wasn't just that, it's just the other stuff that was going on, and it's very difficult. You can explain your opinion, and my principal at the school I was at was very good about listening to people, but he's got people above him pushing him, and he can't agree with you. And I don't even necessarily think he even agrees with certain things, but it's nice that he listens, but if it's going to be shoved down your throat, do you see where I'm coming from? If it's going to be shoved down your throat, what's the point? And then I'm being forced to teach that to kids. And I don't even agree with it.
Okay. Somebody else?
On a positive note,
Yeah.
for homeschool, I feel like the school networking has grown, where before a lot of homeschool students were not allowed to participate in public school sports or activities and private school activities, and that has changed, and for the better. I mean, now homeschool students have the opportunity to not only play for a homeschool team, but also they could play for a private school team or sometimes public school team, and that allows them to, create more peers, build a better community base. They get to be out in the community more. And then also just more school choice. You have the option to go to public, to private, or homeschool. And I think that's becoming more of the way that it has changed. So,
I think we're seeing that across the whole country, not just here in Virginia. All of you guys are from Virginia, but I think that's true. Certainly some places even far more than Virginia. Anything you want to add? Let's go back to that last part. What are the critical things that we need to anticipate in order to prepare our students as teachers, preparing ourselves and preparing, for what's coming over the hill? I mean, there's, that's the big factor in education, is we're preparing students for living 20, 30 years from now. And any thoughts on that?
We need to help our students understand what it means to be human, clarify their values, teach them the wisdom to live according to their values. We need to teach our students to think critically. They need to be able to question the things that are brought before them in our culture, not to accept things mindlessly. I mean, we need to, you almost have to be countercultural as a teacher, because the culture is pushing against knowledge. Knowledge is white privilege. Education, they're pushing against education in so many ways. And we need to fight back as teachers and administrators and parents. And we also need to equip our students to fight against that tide, because it is pulling very strongly towards a view of life that is merely production and consumption, and it is just devaluing all the things that make humans great, in my my arrogant opinion.
It's good to be honest. No, that's good point. Well said. All right, let's move along, because we've got several questions and we're quickly running out of time. So I'm going to skip over. Let me see here. Do we have any questions that have come in? Okay, here's one. Several questions, but here's one. How important is moral education in our school system? We've touched on this a little bit. Can it be done well without invoking religious principles? We kind of covered that, but let's just, for clarity's sake, hit that real quick.
I think it can be covered well, but you'd have to have a teacher that's open to hearing all opinions and not downplaying the Christian or even the Muslim or even, a totally different worldview, that they're all acceptable opinions. It is something that can raise a lot of tensions in a classroom, but I think if you have the right teacher, the discussion can be brought forth, and let the kids think through the ideas, and don't say your voice isn't important because it's not mine and not the teacher's. I don't think it would be easy. I actually believe those discussions do happen in social studies classes. I see them in my classroom, but I don't focus on those things because I'm a math and computer science teacher. But it does happen in my classroom, and the kids talk about those types of things. And I think it's healthy to actually hear the different viewpoints in a positive environment where the kids can grow and learn and think through even other people's ideas. It challenges, even if you're a Christian, you want your kids to even learn Christian ideas. You need to have the challenge, I believe, too.
Right. Let me join the panel for just a second. I think it is absolutely critical that the role of religious instruction, particularly in public schools, but everywhere, the role of religious instruction should predominantly be the role of the parent. The parents are the ones that should be determining that guidance for their children. They can get help from their local church or synagogue or whatever their faith base is. When they send kids to school, if they want to put them in a particular religious institution, school, then what that is, it's the parent saying, yes, this is our values from a religious perspective, and so yes, we are putting you here on purpose because we want you to become grounded in these religious perspectives. In the general sense, I think teachers, like you said, should facilitate conversations that the students want to have and bring up around these topics. Be good listeners, teach respect for opinions and so forth. You don't have to weigh in specifically on one thing or another unless they go contrary to core moral concepts. Here's what we know. All the major world religions have a unity in basic moral code, okay? The Ten Commandments sums them up pretty well, but there are more. But you know, you're not supposed to steal. You're not supposed to lie. You're not supposed to treat your neighbor in a bad way, etc. And I think though the question speaks about religion and teaching morality, I think that comes back to what's the difference between religion and morality. Religion is a system of faith. Morality is what comes out of that underpinning of religious values into a practical way that we live our lives out in community. And that's something that needs to be, as you stated earlier, that we need to come together as communities and determine what kind of values do we want to have in our community. And so then those are the kinds of things that definitely, because kids need guidance in that, they want guidance in that, and there's a lot of different perspective. So religion and morality, they're very close, but they aren't exactly the same thing. And so, but our kids, I think parents need to be the predominant people who take care of teaching their kids about their religious faith, and then teachers need to support the parents from the standpoint of how that carries out into morality and everyday living as a good citizen. Okay? Throw that in for free. All right. Let's talk very quickly. We're running out of time. Testing. You hear a lot about testing. So let's talk about student testing. How important are assessments, and what do you think about how testing is typically done today? Is it working? What needs to change? How much flexibility do you have in your instructional environment to shape assessments? Let's make this one a quick one. Let's start at that end this time.
I would say in AP level classes, you're on a real tight schedule. You have to keep to the curriculum. They've got to make their whole grade, and getting college credit is based on a test at the end of the year. So you gear the test towards that test. That's just the way it is. But the other classes that I've taught that don't have an SOL, or which is a state exam, or they don't have a AP exam, I have a lot more freedom. I personally prefer open-ended questions. I feel like I learn more about what the kids know with an open-ended question than I do with a multiple choice or a true-false or something like that, or fill in the blank. And I like to see their steps if it's math. If it's computer science, I like to see code. And then I know that when I give them a problem and they can solve the problem on a test, okay, do tests work? In my viewpoint, when you get out in the real world, let's face facts, you have to take an SAT, ACT to get into college. You have to pass, as a teacher, I have to pass a praxis exam. In the IT industry, my husband has to take those certification exams. There's the Metcalf exams. There's you are being prepared to take exams for, a good long period of time in your life. And it's not just to get into college and a little bit afterwards. You could be taking certification exams for the rest of your life. So if our culture changes and we don't have those, we could get rid of tests. But until then, I say no.
Yeah, and assessments are important. They help you judge how the students are doing. It holds the teacher accountable, so you know that you are correctly communicating things and you're equipping your students. I have a lot of freedom as a private school teacher to create assessments for myself. I make all my own quizzes and tests, projects and participation grades and whatnot. And I have a base number of assignments I need to have per quarter in order to create the grade for the student. You don't want to have too few. Then you have too much riding on every test, and it makes everybody nervous. So I have a certain number I have to get to, but I create my own, and it's important. It's a way of finding out what the student has learned, and it's tricky because you don't want to teach when the tests are provided for you. You don't want to teach in a way that is going to create a good test grade to make your school pass, or to make you get a promotion or a raise. It's tricky. It's a double-edged sword. It can be used in a really inappropriate way with students. I know my wife has taught in the public schools, and many of the schools will devote 20 or 25% of the year to preparing for the SOL test, the standardized testing. That's too much. You shouldn't spend 25% of your time teaching your kids how to take a test. You want to teach them the information, and then they should be able to take the test. And, there's no perfect students, there's no perfect teachers, there's no perfect schools, but it is a double-edged sword, and you have to watch out for that. I'm not a fan of the government using tests to bring down blessing or curses on schools and teachers. It generates the wrong kind of culture in education.
Well, the other thing it does real quick is, I think, it's kind of one size fits all. And, when you're dealing with students, you're dealing with individuals. And this is not a factory where you're just hammering out widgets. Yeah. You're developing people, each one unique. And so anyway, what about the homeschool environment, testing?
And that plays into that because as a homeschool parent, you can accommodate that test to the specific child's learning needs or style that they, how you can accommodate it to the way that they learn about and what you want them to get out of the assessment. And also, I would say that it's just a small piece to the puzzle. I mean, your assessment is of you as not only in the private and public, but as a homeschool parent. I wanted to assess my daughter so that I could see how I was doing. So.
All right, we're quickly running out of time. We got maybe time for 2 more questions. So here's one real quick. What is a common misconception you've heard about the school choice you represent that you'd like to speak to? About 1 minute or so.
I will definitely say that homeschool The one thing that I always heard as a homeschool parent was, how do you socialize your child? And for me, I mean, I didn't want to be rude or mean, but I was like, that's not what education is about. It's not about socializing my child. But there are many opportunities in the homeschool realm. We have co-ops. They can do extracurricular activities. There's community volunteering that they can do. And there's a huge social network with homeschooling. So there aren't any problems with socializing your child. It's just your personal preference and how you do that.
Okay.
I think one of the primary misconceptions about private schools is that private schools are for rich families. Private schools are for kids that are prepping for college, and that there's no place in a private school for a non-Christian family or a poorer family, or a family that their student doesn't achieve academic brilliance every time. And this is ridiculous. We have in private schools and in public schools, we have a broad range of students, and we service all their needs as best we can.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard people ask me about, basically, are all the teachers liberals? And I can tell you I've worked in several different departments at several different schools, and I would say it's 50-50. And you have very conservative people. As a matter of fact, head of one of the people in our department led the Republican Student Association, stuff like that. It's across the board. There's Christians, there's Muslims, there's every kind of religion you can talk about, but in the public schools as far as the teachers go. And there are a lot of Christian teachers in the school. I meet them all the time, and they are frustrated. Even the Muslim teachers are frustrated. But it's a misconception to think that all public school teachers are very liberal and kind of agree with everything that's going on. It's not true.
Mm-hmm. All right. So is there anything we're leaving out in our conversation tonight? We got just about 2 minutes or so left, or even less. Anything that we should talk about? We're talking about instruction as teachers. Anything?
I think we pretty well covered it, but...
All right. You're satisfied with that? Okay. So let's make this the last question then. What practical advice would you give listeners who want to make an impact in today's education system?
I think that parental school choice, whether it's homeschooling, whether it's influence in their public schools, the choice of their curriculum, choice of their teachers, whether it is having the financial ability to go to a private school, tax credits, whatever, vouchers, whatever it is, our education system will only be as successful as the buy-in by the parents. And you have to make that a priority in our society. We have to, on a political level, we have to establish the rules that allow parents to pick the best schools for their kids, because that's what every single parent wants.
Sure.
They want the best school, and if they can't find the best school, they might homeschool or, whatever. They'll find some kind of hybrid system of play. But, we all want the best for our kids.
Sure.
And so we have to take every step we can to make that possible for the parents.
Well, I think that's a great point to close on, because parents are key, and parents have the right to have their voices heard and to have the needs of their children met. That's what we are all about, and as teachers, and that's what we at Noah Webster Educational Foundation really want to help advance. So thank you all, to our panelists, to our guests, all of you who are attending here tonight, and all of you who are watching online. Thank you for joining us. Just a couple things here in closing. Our next question and answer roundtable is going to be next month on August the 19th. That's August the 19th at 8 p.m. And our focus is going to be the role of parents in education. So that's going to be an interesting panel. We're already working on that and some very exciting things. So August 19, 8 p.m., same place, same station. So tune in for that. I also encourage you to visit Noah Webster Educational Foundation's website. It's simply NWEF.org. O-R-G, and there's a lot of great resources there. Check out our blog page that's under resources, and if you're interested in keeping in touch, knowing what's going on, getting updates, you can sign up for email updates. We send those out periodically. We will not pester you with those, but we want you to be able to stay current. If you like what we're doing, we encourage you to follow us and like us on our social media. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, and we have Instagram. So if you are on any of those, feel free to like us, share there, share content with your friends, with your network, and also if you like what you're seeing and like what we're about, and you want to join with us in a supportive way, you can also contribute to our cause online at Noah Webster Educational Foundation's website, nwef.org. So we thank you for those of you who will do that. So to end the stream, I'm just going to say thank you so much for joining us tonight.